Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, we
We
are
are
back.
back.
We are
We are
back.
back. We are
Are
back.
back with a
It is
daytime show.
a little bit of the light is still the sun is still shining. It is Friday, May 21st. It is 1 p.m. on the eastern coast of Canada. It is the Friday before the long weekend, the Queen's birthday on Monday, or Patriots Day as we call it here in Quebec. The bridges are shutting. Nothing's coming in and out of this city. No one's going anywhere yet, but there is hope on the horizon. I hope you all had an amazing week. I personally had an absolutely phenomenal week. Not only amazing conversations with amazing clients of mine, but yesterday I did something that I've done for the first time in 2 years, which is golf. And yesterday I did something for the first time in a year and a half, which is golf with my dad. I spent the day yesterday with my pops, who's double vaxxed, waxed and vaxxed. And that's the theme of, I think, as we head into this weekend is as you see provinces get ready for their reopenings, we really want to encourage social distancing. But man, if you can't get a vaccine today or this weekend or next week, I don't know what rock you're living under, but it takes all of us. And, that's really the message that we want to put into this long weekend is there's hope on the horizon. Still lockdowns in the provinces across the country. So if you're going to be picking up cannabis, please make sure that you do your click and collect, especially if you're in Ontario. Tip your bud tenders. They are frontline workers. And let's jump into the show. Like, what are we doing here on a daytime show? What is it exactly that's called a special edition Toke? And what am I really doing with this initiative? And I'll tell you what I'm doing. We got a lot of licenses and a lot of licensed producers and a lot of people that touch the plant. And we talk about those people every single day, and we tweet about those people, and we read press releases about the next biggest brand, the best strains on the market. But what I'm going to try and do here with this show is act as a vehicle for non-plant touching services. So once a month, one of these days in the month, usually probably a Friday, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight a non-plant touching ancillary business. So for example, for today, if you sell security software, if you sell HVAC equipment, if you sell seed to sale software, if you sell rolling tables, if you sell rubber gloves, masks, PPE that goes into a cannabis facility, we want to talk to you. Shoot us a message on the Twitter, on our DM, on our Instagram. Today, it's an amazing sort of bridge for me. I'm kicking off this special edition Toke, this sort of initiative that we're doing over the next little while, which is highlighting businesses that are non-plant touching. We have an amazing show for you tonight that's going to dive back into sort of my history of how I got into this space, which if you're watching a couple of Tokes ago, you knew that it was heavily security based, that I started designing cannabis facilities back in 2013 when it came to security designs. And I have a long relationship with this company that we are going to highlight today. And that company is a company called Genetec, which is a Canadian founded company based in La Belle Province, the beautiful city of Montreal. They are a software surveillance video management software company. We're going to be bringing on Scott Thomas, who runs their entire American division when it comes to retail cannabis. He's going to be sharing some amazing insight into what it's like to secure a cultivation facility, what's it like to secure a retail dispensary. And then as these states continue to legalize, what's the future roadmap look like when the country is federally legalized and you're going to have multi-state operators that are operating under one umbrella and you're looking for unified solutions. So we'll get into all of that. But yeah, super excited about what we're going to be doing on this show. As we head into these special Tokes. So Mateo, if you want to add anything, I think with that, we might as well just roll that intro.
Roll that intro.
Yes. So welcome, Scott Thomas. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us on The Joint. How are you?
Mike, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
Right off the bat, I can detect that that's probably a French-Canadian accent, or it might even be a Newfoundlander accent. So I'm not sure that you're based out of Canada, but tell the people where you're based out of.
Yeah, so I'm out of Kansas City, and folks
There
in
you
the
go.
Midwest, we generally have an accent that no one can pick up. But it was a good call on good guesses on who's going to win.
Yeah, I try. So, listen, I'm really excited to have you as our sort of highlight guest as we dive into this non-plant touching highlights of companies that add, tons of value. It's what I try and stress in this space is you essentially it's around excuse me, growing the best cannabis and putting the best product on the market, and everything that it takes to build a facility, to bring a facility online in a legal framework. Security plays such a massive role in that, not only securing the product that comes out of the door, but the people that are inside those high asset sites, whether they're cultivation facilities, excuse me, whether they're dispensaries that house a number of high value products, and the people that are shopping in there. And I really want to hear sort of your position, and if you can give the people that are watching an overview of what you do at Genetec, who Genetec is, and why you guys are positioned so well to transition from what you've been doing into a nascent sort of market and an industry that's about to explode on a massive footprint in the States. So a brief intro into yourself and what you guys are doing, please.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Scott Thomas, and I'm the director of sales for the Signature Brands vertical at Genetec, which includes retail, cannabis, obviously, also financial, gaming, and hospitality industries. Been with Genetec for 14 years. I've been in the industry overall, and boy, I feel old when I say this, almost 30 years, and been very privileged to work with a variety of different customers. We're at Genetec really excited about the cannabis industry. There's a lot of buzz going on in the industry, and I'm going to try and keep the bad puns to a minimum. But we're all really high on this market. So
that's it.
Yeah.
Stop speaking so bluntly, there, Scott.
Yeah, and that was a good one. I had that one in my back pocket, Mike. As for Genetec, you mentioned we're headquartered out of Montreal. We're the oldest video management, IP video management system manufacturer in the world. We actually started in 1997. We built the first one there. We are now the largest VMS in the world as well, and we're top 5 in terms of access control. So primary focus is physical security. What separates us from everybody else in the market is it's a single pane of glass in terms of the software. So all the different security functions, especially as it relates to cannabis, whether it's video, whether it's intrusion, access control, integration into point of sale, asset tracking, all of that into one pane of glass, and it's a great value proposition for the companies, both established and the new folks that are getting into the business.
I think it's a really good. I think what we should really do is dumb it down a little bit for maybe the people watching, and really explain how Genetec plays a role in a system design. And what I'll do is this. What I'd like everybody to watch, who's watching, is you have a building, whether it's a bank, a cultivation facility, a dispensary, an office building, whatever it is. Genetec explain the role that Genetec plays in the security of the building. So you guys work. What I'd like to explain to people is honestly is maybe the supply chain of how you guys are deployed in a facility. So covering that, you're not the camera, you're not the card access hardware, but when you say the pane of glass, explain that to people, the interface, dumb that down, so people are like, okay, it's an operating system. And I don't mean to keep it like that, but explain the beauty of what you're selling, the software.
No. Absolutely. So, as you know, when you're opening a new facility, whether it's cultivation, processing, or retail, there's some fairly stringent regulation in putting those things together. So, what Genetec provides is we provide the software that manages the video cameras, that manages the access control systems, it manages the intrusion alarm systems, it can manage your point of sale. It can manage your inventory control programs, ties all of those things together so that if I'm the person that's in charge of physical security or management, I see all of that information coming into one single user interface on my computer. And what that does is makes life a lot easier. It makes it easier from a compliance standpoint for regulators. It reduces the amount of IT infrastructure that I need to have, reduces the amount of management. So it makes life easier for our customers, makes them far more productive, and it scales out, right, from a single unit operator all the way to a multi-state, hundreds or even thousands of locations.
Right, and we'll get into some of the stuff that Genetec has secured in the past, which, like I said, transitions well into what you're securing today in regards to cannabis. And what I also wanted to explain is what Genetec does really well is not only cannabis, but you mentioned alcohol, casino, tobacco, firearms. I mean, these are all regulated industries that follow SOP guidelines, right? Standard operating procedure guidelines. So when we're talking about a cultivation facility or a dispensary, usually what happens is that you have people that are deemed with different privileges, which means if I'm the janitor, chances are that my card will not open the harvest room or the veg room or the vault, for example. So what Genetec does really well is allows you to deploy different regs and different rules and privileges to each person that's going through that facility. And what you touched on, which again, what I really want to highlight is that this unifies the entire platform. So you have a bunch of different devices that are deployed through a facility, hundreds of cameras, you have hundreds of doors, you have hundreds of locks, you have panic, duress buttons, and all those things. So as somebody, whether you're a security guard or let's say the operations manager, what Genetec does really well is speaks the language through the interface so that it's easy to understand. Oh, do we have a breach in security? Do we have a door left open? So is there, maybe you can touch on some of the evolution of how you guys first started. Obviously, when this first started in 1996, this was also pre the, what's the word we're looking for? Evolution of devices, right? I tell everybody that the reason that I got into security was that cameras went from coax to Ethernet cable, and there was a massive, there was going to be a massive demand for hardware. And the guy who got me into cannabis was like, and non-cannabis in security was like, hey, quit your job and just go sell cameras. I mean, everyone's going to have to rip and replace these cameras. So how has the evolution of software come from 1996 to where we are? I mean, essentially 25 years later. Right. Maybe I'd love to hear some of the evolution of how you guys have how design has come from so far to where we started.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, back when CCTV first came out, right? You had analog, cameras, and you mentioned the coax, and the 18.2 to power, and would just be recorded on a VHS tape. Again, I don't know how many of the audience remember. That's the same thing. You'd go to a Blockbuster and rent, right? And please be kind, rewind. Kind of the downside there was, well, if you were lucky, maybe you could get a whole day on one VHS tape, and that didn't really scale, especially if you needed dozens or hundreds of cameras at a facility, right? You'd have a room with DVRs stacked up in racks, and you'd have a whole wall of nothing but VHS tapes. So it became essential to find a better way, right? How do we store this information that's coming in, right? And the evolution of it from there, Mike, in all candor, was with analog. Whenever you would go to zoom in on a shot, if you zoomed in too much, you'd pixelate, right? Nothing ever looked like it looked on CSI, right, or on Jack Bauer on 24. But everybody,
I'm sure you've seen the video enhance. And have you ever seen that video that goes around security? So Mateo was offline. You got to. I'll show you this video, but this world of what we see on TV never is duplicated in real life. Right? Pixels are granulated, and there's no enhance
between reality and TV, right? I had folks would say, "Oh, can't you blow up that license plate that's 2 miles away up and pull all that out?" I guess if you get the right kind of camera today, you actually could do that. But most of the stuff that folks were buying out there, not really. It's not magic, right? It's all math. There's a certain amount of pixels per camera on the screen, and if you've got enough of them, you can enhance and blow that up and really get good solid evidence and good pictures, right? But if not, then well, that's pretty much where you're going to be stuck with. So
yeah,
but that's kind of the evolution. And then as things started to progress, what you found was, and I'm going to get right, and this is a stat from retail, 98% of all video that's recorded, Mike, is never watched. It's never seen. It's never looked at. There's hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of cameras out there recording, but you don't have enough eyes. There's not enough human eyes to employed in these companies to sit and watch it all. Nor do you really need to, right? So you needed to have things that made you look.
So
there had to be
investigation.
it had to be a data point, right? I had to be able to tie into things, right? Either if I'm doing live monitoring, I needed some sort of notification that something was happening, like a panic alarm, or maybe a door being forced open, or if it's forensic investigation, I need to be able to go back and find, when did this person enter this room, right? Or when did this particular transaction happen? Determine if something bad, was going on. And that's where the need to bring all these disparate systems together really spawned from. And so in the past, you would have, imagine, right, 5 different programs running at the same time, right? All with a different operating system, all with a different, set of buttons on the user interface.
You're going to your ZHS machine, then you're going to your printer to print out the alarm controls, and then you're going to your, it's complete madness. So Genetec comes along and really, and what I know about the Genetec team is the R&D that goes into writing new code. And it's so funny, shout out to licensed LPR. I mean, you were talking about license plate recognition and using a camera. Well, I know the projects that were launched here in Quebec with the Sûreté Quebec, where they started mounting the LPR readers on the top of the SQ car here, and that was stuff that was written by Genetec. So definitely always on the forefront of what's going on in technology, and really working through their integrators. It's something that I learned with my 3 years when I was at Marcom. So I mean, we're a cannabis focused podcast. And you guys play a huge role in cannabis, like we said. I know a number of different facilities up here in Canada as well, in the States, are running Genetec software. So from your perspective, what does the world of cannabis security look like today, in terms of like what are you seeing from a design perspective, and from I'd say maybe a cost perspective, and then how does it act as an ROI to someone? If you're building, let's say, a 50,000 square foot cultivation facility, chances are you're going to have close to 200 cameras in there. So, I mean, you're rolling out a system that's going to probably be well over $1 million when all is said and done. So I'd love to know some of your experiences from what cannabis looked like prior to either where you are, where it is today, and then how do you see us moving forward?
Yeah, for sure, Mike. First off, the big thing to understand down here in the States, right? Each state that has legalization, whether it be for medicinal or recreational purposes, going to have their own regs. And to be candid, the regs are all over the place, right? You have some states where, it's minimum, you want to have camera coverage and some access control. You have specific states where counties and cities want to have regulators to be able to get in at any time, to be able to observe any camera, have access to any of the archived video or recorded video, right? Be able to, know who is going into product rooms or into grow facilities. You've got regulation, literally demanding, tracking of that plant from the time it comes out of the ground till the time it gets put into a storage closet, all the way through the production. So being able to meet those specific requirements really requires a lot of forethought and planning, right? So we work with various consultants that know the regulations in the different states. They're familiar with our technology, and they can help lay out the proper course. And I want to take a step back here and say that, especially new states, and there's a lot of them coming online, right? You may have noticed in the U.S. House here, it was about 3 weeks ago, they just passed the cannabis banking bill. So finally, banks are now going to be able to handle cash for these different cannabis companies around the country, and that had been a big problem, right? Because before you'd had to basically try and partner up with a credit union in your individual state and couldn't transfer money across state lines. So we're seeing the proverbial dam breaking in,
Sure.
with regards to the expansion. But what I was talking about on the regs. So with regs that are asking for that, first off, in a state to apply, you've got to submit a security plan. And the regulators in these states tend to look more favorably on customers or potential
license holders
that are actually planning out a good, solid security plan that meets and in some cases exceeds what they're asking for from a reg standpoint. Now, the big national companies that are multi-state here down in the U.S., they're plotting these out with regard to putting the most stringent regulation as the standard operating procedure for every facility they open, regardless of state. So why do they do that? Well, regulations also change, right?
Right.
We're seeing regulations vary from, literally year to year in some of these states. We've seen some states go down in, like, for example, the amount of video that you have to store, right? In some cases, when it started off, it was 2 years. Now it's down to 6 months. But we've also seen, conversely, it increase in some states where it started at 30 days, right? And now it's up to 6 months. So,
right. So that's why I go back to Canada, where we started with a federally regulated program. And I tell you what I do in BC in terms of security, in terms of grow practices, in terms of, again, any type of regulations comes from one body. So it's that uniformed language going from, let's say, from coast to coast here in Canada. But what you do in California is different than what you do in Nevada, and what you do in Nevada is different than Ohio. So yeah, I think I'm getting what you're saying, which is where budget permits, it's you design to the highest standard. Because again, what's going to happen in my mind is where you have these either more lackadaisical states when it comes to security, when it comes to grow practices, are going to have to get in line with the governing body, right? It's not going to be what I do in Delaware, I can still do in California, because it should be one uniformed program, which means like cameras are recorded at a certain frame per second, storage is saved on site for a certain amount of days if you want to offshoot storage to the cloud. So it's like you will have to either conform or redesign and do something really well, which is rip and replace your old system and put something new in. So, I mean, and right now what we're seeing in the space, I mean, every other week there's another big MSO that's acquiring another cultivation facility. They're acquiring assets. So right now, I mean, it's scattered, right? If an MSO, let's say, if we're talking one of the big ones, Trulieve or Curaleaf or Cresco, if they're buying a facility, chances are that they're buying the asset and they're, in my mind, would be leaving the asset, which means if it's two different systems are not talking to each other, I would think that they were leaving them for the time being. But you would have to think that once these systems come online, they're going to want to turn all these footprints into an enterprise system, right? And maybe if you could explain to people, when Genetec helps design a security system and it's enterprise, what does enterprise really mean? And I'll allude to it. It's a bigger system than something that's on a smaller site scale. So talk to us maybe a little bit about how you think current MSOs operate, right? So if they're operating in multi-states, different regulations in every state, and then touch on how you expect you see those sites coming to a unified platform in the future. And do you think that would happen? Obviously, if there's a federally regulated program.
Yeah. So, first off, just to walk it back a little bit, whenever somebody gets into this business, just to start off, right, the whole idea is, well, I may start off with one facility, but, I've got to have in my mind a big picture of I'm going to grow, right? I'm going to want to have multiple facilities across the state, right? That's the old adage in retail is grow or die. Just single shop operations, right, or a single facility, it's going to go for so long, but eventually, right, I'm going to have competition moving in, right? I'm going to have, different needs, and I'm going to want to expand the operation. So now to get into your question specifically is when I expand that operation, I'm going to want to be able to have visibility to all of my sites. I'm not going to want to have a single system at each site that I have to log off, log onto, for each individual one. And this also even falls into regulation, right? Again, going back to one of the municipalities specifically. So they require in this particular state that anytime a camera fails, right? Anytime you have a camera failure, the camera breaks, right? The network breaks, you have to immediately notify them, right? And you have to have a backup plan for getting that repaired. And if you don't, you should look at a couple of things, right? If you violate this, you're looking at fines and substantial fines, right? And the worst possible scenario is your license is suspended, right? If these regs are not followed, and it goes all the way into the audit process as well, right? When they come back and they want to know, show me your point of sale, show me your age verification, right?
Sure.
Show me the history of these plants. Let me make sure that, there wasn't any possible cross-contamination. So again, how do I do that if I've got, 5, 10, 20 facilities, right, spread across the state? Well, it gets even more challenging if I'm doing it from a multi-state, right? If I'm trying to manage all of that, I'm trying to keep my system up. I'm also trying to make sure I'm following the regs. I'm also trying to make sure that, nothing's getting stolen, right? I mean, one of the worst possible things is, in some of the places where you have, daily inventory as part of the regulation. And you go through and guess what? I've got a pound of product missing. That's a big one, right? And so that's where all of this being tied. And especially if I can't just hop in my car, or I can't jump on the corporate jet and just fly out there, how am I going to see and find this, right? If I'm not simultaneously connected to all these systems. And that's what Genetec does, right? That's what an enterprise is bringing all of those different facilities, all my different stores, my cultivation, production facility, all into that single user interface, that single pane of glass that I talked about.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And then, like you said, it has to be weighted substantially when you have these MSOs, or even anyone who's looking to acquire a business, whether it is a dispensary or a cultivation facility. You have to weight that security system, that security design as a valuable asset, because, like you said, it's tracking the value of the goods that are inside the facility. So whether that's product, whether that's people, understanding that you're covered from an insurance. I'm obviously it must add to insurance as well, right? I mean, if you want to insure crops, if you're looking to insure inventory, you got to have that stuff protected. So yeah, I mean, I know that there's a bunch of different people that have valued security systems when they're talking about an asset acquisition. Can you talk anything about that in the past?
Yeah.
Have you guys been brought in to look at a facility and maybe do an evaluation? Or
sure, yeah. A couple of our multi-state operators, right, look at potential acquisitions as new states open, right? You're looking at one of two things. Do I build a new facility, or am I looking to acquire, an existing operator in that particular state? So there's a lot of things that go into the valuation, but one of them, right, is what kind of security system do they have in there? How much money am I going to have to spend to, get them up to be on their standard, right. Onto the Genetec platform, right, to make that move. And if that particular MSO, or I'm sorry, if that particular operator in that state has bought something that's proprietary, right, it's not open architecture, and by proprietary, I mean the cameras would only work with that particular system, or the access control only works with that particular software. You're talking about a hardware rip and replace that, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars that's spent. So that absolutely affects the valuation. That's one of the things that they look at when they're making offers to buy out operators in existing states, right? So, making that investment is something that'll return itself, depending on, again, if I want to grow, or if my plan is ultimately to be acquired by an MSO somewhere down the road.
And it's also understanding what I call giving your security system a day job, right? Like, what other added value do you have besides securing the facility? And I've talked to this numerous times about, in terms of, I sold security systems once as time and attendance, right? Understanding that you're the employee management, when it comes down to like when people are clocking in and clocking out, you're able to audit trail that through a security system. Again, something that has to be talked about is recalls. Right? When you have a product that, let's say, hits a shelf, and then the government or the regulator is calling back that you have a product that has to be recalled, you need to find that batch number, you need to find out exactly what happens, or even quarantining a room that has either been infested or whatever it is, locking down a room, quarantining an area. The value of a security system comes from understanding like what else can it do. So anything that you can touch on in terms of interesting stuff that you've seen in a security design and stuff like that?
Absolutely. And, our conversation so far has really been focused on what can this particular system do in terms of physical security and meet and reg. But what about other things that we can tie into and bring that information to bear immediately, right? Or report on it. So we can tie into the temperature system in the grow house, right? What if the temperature unexpectedly starts to fall because the heaters aren't working, right? We can give a notification, right? We can let them know that that particular, facility is in peril and they need to get maintenance out there right away and do something. We can let them know in the server room if the fans are starting to go out, right? We can let them know if lights in the facility, right, are on or off. Building management, any type of building management or automation can also be brought in as a notification.
Right. In terms of, like you were saying, temperature detection, huge, which can, ruin a crop relatively quickly. Sprinklers not going on, which means that the soil's not being watered. Like doors being left ajar, which is letting moisture into the room. Like I said, the more jobs that you give your security system, what's the word I'm looking for? Purpose for, the more that it adds value, the more that you're able to be more efficient, like we're talking about, time and attendance, cultivation cycles, all those type of alarms working into building automation, building temperature controls. So yeah, it's super effective, obviously. And then we're talking about perimeter detection as well. Genetec is, again, famous for integrating into fence detection. I believe. Maybe I'd love to hear some of the trends that you see potentially coming up as the states federally legalizes. So right now, like you said, we play in a world where each state has different regulations. How difficult do you think it will be once the states federally legalizes? So then you would have, let's say, interstate commerce. So you'll have product transferring state lines. You'll have, the transport of money. So I don't want to overload too many questions. Let's start with this. How do you see regulations evolving from a security perspective once everything federally regulates?
Yeah. So again, that's a great question. So one is when you get to a part or get to a point, I guess, when product is going to start tracking across state lines, then you're going to basically have to secure, obviously the product. You're going to have to make sure that there's no, interruption in that product movement. So we have products right now, and we use them on transit systems, right, that are small portable devices, right, that have a camera built in and the server online transmits the video wirelessly when you get back to a docking station, but it can monitor everything that's going on in that transport vehicle, right? And it can be geo-mapped in terms of GPS, right? So I can open up the plan manager, the mapping application inside of our product and see where that truck is en route, right? I can know if it stops unexpectedly. I can know if it deviates. So that's important. Likewise, from the cash handling standpoint, one of our customers in the retail industry has rolled out a specific brand of safe. And as part of the contract they have with this time lock safe manufacturer, they give them a specific special rate on it. But the caveat is they have to have a camera on that safe 24/7 that is accessible by the manufacturer, right? Okay. So that's part of the insurance that the safe manufacturer gives them, that the safe is impenetrable, right? It can't be broken into or stolen, but you got to have that camera on it, and they've got to have access to it at any given time that they want to pull it up. So again, all these things tying into making sure that the facility, your cash, your product, your people are all safe. Very, very important.
100%. So as this industry evolves. And like you said, I think it's in my perspective, I think it's at least like 1 to 3 years from when the states federally regulates. Some of the past stuff that you guys have done to transition well into this, I'd love to hear how you guys, if you're looking at a cultivation facility, what's the easiest transmissible what's the easiest comparable? So like if I'm looking at, I always did that too. If I was looking at 300,000 square foot cultivation facility, I was like, oh, it looks like a giant prison. Or, this looks potential like a big dispensary, has the same flow traffic as, let's say, a casino. So when you're looking at a security design, how do you evaluate? I mean, that's what I did. So like, how do you evaluate an asset? How do you evaluate an initial design? From a software perspective, you're not a hardware perspective, right? So you're not really doing camera angle views or securing doors. What's the mentality that goes into, let's say, from a cultivation perspective and then from a dispensary perspective?
Sure. So with a cultivation facility, most of the regs that we see, right, you've got to have eyes or a camera on every plant, right? 24/7, and that's got to be recorded and stored. So what typically happens is our integration partners go out, they do the site walk, or they get the original CAD design for it, make sure that it at minimum is meeting that reg. We're also looking at securing all the doors into the facility. Again, different regs mean certain folks may be able to come in and out of the facility, but you may always need a senior person in charge, and that person's always got to be on the floor when that's going in. From the actual shops or dispensaries themselves, you're seeing everything. I mentioned a couple of things, right? Daily inventory. And that's where our ability to tie into something like an RFID tag or the UPC barcoding system, right? When they're taking that, and it basically ties that inventory to video. So let me give you a good example, right? So if I'm tied into that particular system, and let's say that I have got, again, a package of gummy bears, for lack of a better idea, right? That turns up missing, right? And I can see, well, you know what? This was scanned at 11 o'clock on Monday, okay? But when we did the Tuesday inventory, it turned up missing. So right away, I've got an investigation point to see, okay, between 11 o'clock Monday and 11 o'clock Tuesday, where did that disappear? And then I can run a motion search on that production area or that storage area and say, show me every time somebody came in and out of that area or anytime there was movement. Well, then that's going to, break it down even further. And I may see that, it got moved out from a storage area onto the floor, and somehow that didn't get recorded, right? And that's why it's missing from there. Or conversely, if it was in a facility where, maybe an employee, picked it up and left it on a counter, and a customer may have grabbed it, right? It's going to show us that, right? And then I can tie that back to the video. If I'm integrated into their the ID system, right? We can go back and look and identify the customer who potentially walked off with $100 worth of product.
Really? So really every design comes down to almost from the inside out, going like, what are the problems that we potentially face? What are the high traffic areas? And then really working, like you said, with the integrator and with the client to come up with a solution. And I think it's also very important to point out, and I want to bookend this sort of with our conversation. We have a couple of questions from the audience, and then we'll let you get to your Friday. Is like, it's not one system fits all. It's not one design fits all. Your interest is to be able to come up with the best security design that A, fits within a budget, B, keeps everybody safe, and at the end is scalable, because again, if you're not growing, you're not growing. And at the end of the day, you want to make it a user-friendly interface for the client. And I think that's super important to say.
It's also important.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, the other thing about this is it's modular, right? So,
right.
You don't have to start off with everything integrated, right? You can work your way up to that, right? So I don't have to start off with my POS or my inventory management, integrated. I can build up to that, if for example, we don't have budget to do that right off the bat. That's the great thing about open architecture, and it's the great thing about being modular and being able to add these different integrations and these different programs in whenever the MSO needs them.
Nice. Okay, we have a couple of questions coming in from the audience. I'm just going to go on my phone and pull them up. So we have James W. in Los Angeles, California, who says, tell us a little bit about what it took to design MedMen dispensaries. I love those stores. So I had alluded to beginning that you guys are the integrator or the software integrator for all MedMen dispensaries across the state. So maybe if you just want to talk a little bit about, without giving out too much information about, I guess the chain operates kind of like an MSO. I believe they have multiples of probably 20 stores minimum, I think. But yeah, maybe if you can explain a little bit what it took to design that dispensary, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, first of all, I can tell you that their vice president of security came from retail, and so he had a lot of ideas right off the bat on what it was going to be required to take and protect all these different sites. So, and his name's Chris Rodriguez, just an incredible guy. Chris looked at this and said, we've got to make this so that whatever the most stringent requirement that we have at any particular state is would scale, and we'll use that as our foundation for every additional state we go to, right? And that way we should be covered, right, as we make these moves when we submit our application and design. And one of the things that he's done from that enterprise basis is he's brought all of those into a security operations center. It's a SOC is the acronym, right? So they can do all of that monitoring of the facilities in-house, right? They don't have a third-party company that monitors that for them. They are able to then minimize some costs there, keep everything in-house, be able to know if a system's down. And again, that's a particular state I was talking about. If a camera goes down, right, they've got to instantaneously know in a specific county there and notify the regulators. That's also the same state where the regulators have the ability or demand the ability to be able to pull in and look at any camera at any given time or immediately be able to access their recorded footage. I mean, just incredibly stringent regulation. But the design that went into that, again, crediting his foresight and putting that together and working with us because he had a vast knowledge of our product from his retail days.
Right, and that's the thing, is creating a standard and a quality of security as you roll out. Right, it's like, I don't care what we're suggested to do. This is the way that we're going to do things, and it's a standard operating design. As like you said, they either acquire a site or they build a new one, and as they go national, it's continued to be sort of that enterprise feel. Another question from the audience is from Gina R. She wanted to know, where can we find a demo or learn more about the software?
Okay, well, Gina, you can go to www.genetec.com, and that's going to focus on the cannabis industry as well as all the other industries that we service. You'll see all the different product lines, and gosh, there's so many different things we haven't even talked about. Being able to take video up to the cloud and manage it, evidence sharing with law enforcement, a whole lot of different things that we do. But yeah, to learn more about that, reach out to us, and we'll be glad to hook you up with the right information.
Something else I want to allude to, and there's been a couple of dispensary robberies up here in Canada, and what a lot of people aren't thinking is 9 times out of 10, or probably even 10 out of 10, the windows to a dispensary are frosted, which means nobody knows what's going on the inside of the shop, and that's super scary. It's like, I kind of like if you're going past a 7-Eleven, you see a holdup, what's going on the inside. There's trouble on a bus, you have a way in. What regulators have done really well is try to keep people from out, right? I always told people that correctional services wanted to keep inmates in, and Health Canada wants to keep people out. And if you have to design the system the same mentality, right? It's the safety of the people inside, not knowing what's going on from the outside. And integration into a design is huge when you talk about law enforcement, when you talk about bringing up video, when you're talking about after the fact, right? We design security systems for preventative measures, but we're not always thinking about what happens after the fact. And we talked about that post-incident investigation, which, like you said, between Genetec's motion detection, stuff that you go through the timeline, through all of the interfaces is super unbelievable. I encourage everybody to go to your website. Trade shows are starting to open back up. I know Genetec does all the major trade shows. I am working my tail off with some of the people behind the scenes at Genetec to get you guys into MJ Biz, which is going to be the first big cannabis trade show that's going to be hitting the scene towards the end of October. So super excited to do that. If Scott, you want to tell anybody what's coming up for you? I don't know if you have any trade shows that are coming up, if there's any live webinars. Where can the people find you? Reach out to you. I know you have a LinkedIn account. Maybe you want to put up, we'll put up the website, stuff like that. But yeah, tell the people how to reach you.
Yeah, so you can email me at sthomas@genetec.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. In terms of shows, yeah, you hit the MJ Biz show. So we've submitted. We're actually going to have a panel discussion there where I'll have a couple of our end users and one of our consultants. If they accept that, we'll be doing a full panel to discuss exactly what we've been talking about here today in terms of best practices, different things that we're seeing in the industry. Likewise, the CIA, the Cannabis Industry Association, they've got multiple shows going on this year, and so we've submitted into them as well to do the same panel discussion. And I believe they have shows this year: Baltimore, Chicago, and San Francisco. If I'm not mistaken. I don't have that right up in front of me, but I think that's where it's going to be. So yeah, our messaging is we want to be able to get out, talk to the industry about this, because when you go to the the different industry web pages, you don't really see security discussed very much, right?
No.
And yet this is an integral part of getting the business open, keeping on the right side of the regulators, and being able to protect your people, your asset, and most importantly, your profit.
And then what you touched on there, and we'll end it with this, is not only life is left to interpretation, but regs are left to interpretation. And I talked about this 2 episodes ago where I did my own little story, which was the physical security directive for cannabis when it was first launched was 8 lines in the original document that came out for an application for cultivation in Canada. And I would write hundreds of pages of security design and SOPs off of 8 lines. So it is all interpretation of who is looking at a design, who understands what an asset is and how to protect it. And I encourage everybody, if you're looking for a software company, also if you're looking for hardware or any stuff like that, Genetec is an unbelievable pipeline to the front leaders of security design around the world. Not only do they secure casinos and sports stadiums, they secure cities. So if governments around the world are looking at them to secure the populace, is definitely good enough for your cannabis facility. Scott, with that, I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to shift you out. Thank you so much for jumping on the show. I look forward to meeting you in person. If it's not for some Kansas City barbecue, it'll be for some Kansas City barbecue sometime in Vegas when I'm there in October. You can bet I'll see you there for the MJ Biz show.
We've got some great barbecue spots in Kansas City, but I know a pretty good place I can take you to in Vegas as well.
It's a date. Thanks so much, Scott. Have a great weekend. And with that, that is the end of the first special Toke edition. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to let you know that you can find this edition that we posted up on our YouTube channel. It's going to be posted on our Twitter. For the giveaway this week, I have a box full of caramel stuff. It might be some cannabis, it might be some rollies, it might be some other stuff. So if you like and share the link once I post it, I'll put you into the draw for that. Once again, I want to wish everybody a happy Victoria Day weekend. Stay safe, hug your family members if you can, stay socially distanced, make sure to shop shinybud.com, pick up your curbside cannabis, be kind to your bud tenders. With that, Mateo offline, roll the outro.